I listen to a lot of music, maybe not as much as the Spotify wrapped 0.005%ers, but more than most. Back before streaming existed, I used to go to the public library and rent 10 CDs at a time, rip them into iTunes, and then go get 10 more. Sometimes I wouldn't even know what it was that I was renting. I just thought the cover art looked cool. Years passed, and midway through my college experience, Spotify became everything. The idea of having any conceivable song at your fingertips before streaming wasn't a novel concept. For instance, the copy of 808s and Heartbreak on my hard drive is still the YouTube to MP3 files that I ripped when I was a kid. But Spotify certainly made it easier than ever to make whatever song you wanted apparate before you in an instant. Sharing music with friends became instantaneous, but in no insignificant way also became much less romantic. The days of mixtapes, or my generation's version, burning mix CDs, were over for everyone except those who chose to live in antiquity. Making someone a personalized playlist is still tantamount to emotional bloodletting for your friends and various crushes, but the tactile element of putting Sharpie to disc can't be replicated entirely. Alongside the age-old tradition of sharing music recommendations with your friends, Spotify and other streaming vendors ushered in what could be considered the Cambrian explosion of playlist culture, making it possible to listen to music compilations curated by anyone around the world. I can type in something meaningless like music to cook fish to you, and would you look at that, here's a playlist for that exact occasion. There are playlists for any conceivable mood, vibe, emotion, situation, crisis, or catharsis you might have the capacity to feel, and that's wonderful. There is a sweetness and a certain romance that comes with thinking about someone out there experiencing emotions from the little auditory experience that I created. There is also the weirder, much more cynical side of playlist culture, where Spotify editorial playlisting acts as an arbiter of taste and what is allowed to break through the mold, in addition to whatever that AI DJ thing is. No tool created by a multi-billion-dollar corporation can be bereft of ick. Good and bad aside, discovering music through Spotify's recommendations is only one way to introduce new music into your rotation, despite the company's efforts to create and cultivate a sexy little monoculture for us to live in. What has entered my life as a welcome addition to my vibe-sculpting arsenal within the past few years, and I'm so glad it has, is finding music on TikTok. If you have ever hung out with me for more than a half hour, I have likely pulled out my phone to show you a TikTok that applies to the situation we are currently in. Watching TikTok for an hour or two feels like downloading 4,000 years of culture into my brain, and my folds are most likely irreversibly altered because of this app entering my life. However, if I am to choose one medium as my brain rot apparatus of choice, I am choosing TikTok. TikTok is a sometimes heavenly digital cocktail of all the things I like to stare at and listen to, all in one place. And it all comes so fast. I can catch up on the latest Nickelodeon behind-the-scenes drama, learn how to cook pasta carbonara, and watch some dude review a pair of headphones I will never be able to afford, all within the span of 60 seconds. I'm sure that when television was first invented, there was probably a similar chorus of concern trolling over the evils of that mode of data transmission, and rightly so in some instances. TikTok, much like television before it, and really any medium of information transmission, can be weaponized as a vehicle for propaganda and other nonsense from nefarious actors. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. My argument is that TikTok has become an incredibly powerful tool for music distribution and discovery, and that taking that away from the millions of independent musicians and creators on the platform is a violently disruptive act towards anyone who dares to think of themselves as an artist. When you first download TikTok, the algorithm is mostly a bunch of junk that appeals to the widest demographic possible, more in line with what you might find on Instagram or YouTube Shorts. However, once you really start to engage with the platform through search, sharing, liking, and saving, it does a remarkable job at introducing you to things that you might end up loving, including bands and musicians. I often find small, up-and-coming artists that end up becoming part of my regular rotation, but I also run into a ton of older music that has been sitting there in the ether this entire time, unbeknownst to me. This isn't a comprehensive list, but to name a handful of artists that have come across my feed in recent years, we have Mallbangs, Labi Siffre, Chase and Status, Chappel Roan, Anna Bates, Sierra Ferrel, Gia Margaret, Odie Leigh, Petey, Juliana Chahayed, Gregor McMurray, Searows, Superheaven, Turnover, Davide Fernando, Viv and Riley, The Year End, Yeems, and Sybil Bayer. The list goes on. The funny thing about all of this is that even though all these artists have entered my life through TikTok, they have all come from vastly different types of content within the app. Songs from Labi Siffre and Sybil Bayer have been around since the 1970s, somewhat forgotten to time by mainstream audiences. And yet there exists a pocket of dedicated crate diggers on the internet who have used their nerd tactics for good to shine a light on these works of art for a whole new generation to enjoy. On another side of TikTok, you have Petey, who you might know as that guy with the long face and a silly deadpan sense of humor who makes sketches where he talks to other versions of himself. Turns out, he also writes incredibly powerful, synth-filled pop songs about love and masculinity and the absurdity of living in America. I've had Don't Tell the Boys stuck in my head for 2 years, and I hope it never becomes unstuck. Petey's ability to make music that is vulnerable and bursting at the seams with sincerity is so well suited to a platform that allows for bouncing between content that lights up totally different sets of neurons in your head. As a musician myself, I wish this technology had existed when I first started writing and recording songs. There's no guarantee that anyone will make it big on TikTok, but it certainly directs eyes and ears to your content on a scale that far surpasses the glory days of SoundCloud. With that said, it takes a strict dedication to posting and brand consistency to really get people's attention, and it's exciting to watch that in real time for small artists on my For You page. An artist that fascinates me with their aesthetic promotional choices is Mallbangs, who sounds like Elliott Smith reborn as a mercurial, catchy, gothic indie rock frontman. The artwork for his most recent singles, Gutter and Doozy, feature a demented-looking teddy bear that wouldn't look out of place in the company of Sid's collection of Frankenstein experiments from Toy Story. I see him repost videos of people using his songs in their own videos, and often they're screen recordings of people playing old Resident Evil games, or just compilations of pictures of liminal spaces. This type of music promotion is against the grain in some ways, but it's also a decidedly savvy choice to recognize your audience and lean into the aesthetic that crops up around it. It doesn't hurt that the songs are also really fucking good. The biggest runaway success I've seen on the platform in recent memory is Chappel Roan, who I first encountered with the song Red Wine Supernova, which, much like all of her songs, has some incredibly funny and incisive lyrics that make her stand out amidst her pop contemporaries. The videos I used to see of her were mostly in smaller, more intimate venues, and now when she pops up on my feed, she is either playing the NPR Tiny Desk or on tour with Olivia Rodrigo. Even more recently, since I started writing this article, I've seen her playing at festivals to masses of people all there to see her specifically, decked out in pink cowgirl outfits screaming HOTTOGO. I'm not sure if there are some behind-the-scenes label or marketing forces behind her rise to prominence, but even if there are, you can't simply market someone into the level of virality that she has had in the past 6 months. You can lead a horse to water, aka the viewer to your ad, but you can't make them engage with the content if it's just not hitting the right pleasure centers for the viewer. It's frankly quite inspiring to see the level of success she's had, especially when the various algorithms on my phone will pull up a video of her singing on the street before her rise to stardom. Seeing someone like her, or Alex G, or anyone else who has struck a chord with an audience through the power of the internet makes it all seem tangible. TikTok won't necessarily vault you into playing arenas, but it could. And even if it doesn't, it could at least platform you into a small community of people who really like what you have to offer the world. And in some ways, that's even better. Whether an artist big or small or somewhere in between, TikTok has become an incredibly powerful force in the music industry, and the idea that it might die a legislated death in the not-so-distant future is a travesty. Is TikTok secretly a tool for the Chinese government to influence American-born technological enterprise? Probably not. Will taking the platform away from us cause undue harm to thousands of small artists and businesses? Absolutely. What is there to do about it? Probably not a whole lot, to be honest. There is an argument to be made that if TikTok dies, then these artists' audiences will simply find them on the other platforms they exist on, and therefore the artists won't be affected in the long run. That argument makes sense in a vacuum, but that's a lot of work to put on the consumer, and I don't see that logic translating one-to-one into reality. In the digital age, if something is out of sight, it's out of mind. Our decaying attention spans paired with the increasingly volatile speed of media cycles basically guarantees that whatever hot thing is being bandied about the algorithm in front of you is more likely to catch your attention than an artist who you need to hunt down in the wake of a platform's collapse. If and when TikTok collapses under the weight of the American political machine, and we have to migrate to the shittier, less perfect versions of what TikTok has to offer, YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, etc., I will look back at my time on TikTok as an era where the algorithm knew exactly what I wanted, and as scary of a proposition as that is, it resulted in an undeniably significant amount of new and beautiful music entering the world. With that said, there's no reason why the unique sense of disparate community that TikTok provides can't continue outside of the bounds of one glorious phone application. As small creators and artists trying to make something of ourselves, or simply shouting into the internet's void, hoping to connect with someone, anyone at all, we must continue to seek out each other's art and support each other in the ways that we can. Music at its barest form is simply an expression of feeling, and finding something that someone else created floating in the digital ether and having it touch your soul is a beautiful thing. That can still happen, but the landscape will change and we will have to adapt. Maybe the disappearance of TikTok from our lives is a sign that it was too good to be true in the first place, and that we should all get off our phones and touch grass. Will we? Probably not, but it's possible. The internet is forever until it isn't.